The wind howled through the empty streets of Hampstead like a wounded animal, carrying with it the weight of Charlotte James's failures. 3 years. 3 years since she'd left her steady job at the marketing firm to chase her dreams of owning a sustainable fashion boutique. 3 years of pouring every penny, every sleepless night, every ounce of hope into green threads, only to watch it crumble like autumn leaves. The eviction notice was still crumpled in her coat pocket, delivered just this morning along with the final demands from suppliers. Her parents' disappointed silence during their last phone call echoed louder than any shouting match ever could. The bank account that once held her life savings now mocked her with its balance of £12 and 43 pence. Charlotte pulled her thin coat tighter as she walked deeper into Hampstead Heath, the snow falling heavier with each step. Her phone buzzed. 1% battery remaining. Perfect. Even her phone was giving up on her. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd spent months posting motivational quotes on social media, trying to market her way out of bankruptcy. Never give up. Dreams don't have expiration dates. The very messages that now felt like lies had been her last desperate attempt to convince herself that tomorrow might be different. But tomorrow felt like a luxury she couldn't afford.
The old oak tree at the heart of the heath had always been her thinking spot. During university, she'd come here to study for exams. During her corporate days, she'd eaten lunch here while planning her escape into entrepreneurship. Now, it would witness her final post. Charlotte's fingers, numb from cold, struggled to type on the small screen. The wind made it nearly impossible to see, but she persevered. This message needed to be perfect, not for likes or shares. Those days were over, but because it might be the only honest thing she'd ever posted. To anyone who still follows this account, she began, her thumbs moving slowly across the screen. I want you to know that your dreams matter. Mine didn't work out, but that doesn't mean yours won't. I tried to build something beautiful, something that mattered. I failed, but maybe failure is just another kind of success, the success of having tried it all. She paused, watching her breath create small clouds in the frigid air. In the distance, the warm lights of suburban London twinkled like unreachable stars. Families were probably sitting down to dinner, children doing homework, couples planning their weekends. Normal lives, lives that suddenly seemed impossibly precious. I've learned that we're all walking through storms of different shapes and sizes. Some of us make it to the other side, some of us don't. But every step matters. Every attempt to love, to create, to help someone else, it all matters, even when it feels like it doesn't. Her phone screen dimmed, the battery dying, but she had just enough left for one final line. Thank you for walking with me this far. Keep walking for both of us. #keep walking, #stormwalkers. She hit post just as her phone died completely.
Charlotte slipped the dead phone into her pocket and leaned back against the oak's rough bark. The cold was seeping through her clothes now, making her drowsy. She'd read somewhere that freezing wasn't a painful way to go. You just got sleepy, then peaceful, then nothing. The snow continued to fall, each flake catching what little light remained. She thought about her parents, who'd immigrated from Hong Kong with nothing but hope and determination. They'd built a successful restaurant, put 2 children through university, achieved their version of the British dream. How disappointed they must be that their daughter had thrown it all away,
for a fantasy about sustainable fashion. She thought about her ex-business partner, Mike, who'd pulled out when things got difficult. It's not personal, Charlotte. It's just business. But it had felt personal. Everything felt personal when you'd invested your entire identity into something that was crumbling. Most of all, she thought about all the customers who'd believed in green threads, the young mother who'd bought her first post-baby outfit from Charlotte's boutique, the teenager who'd saved up for months to buy an ethically made dress for her school formal, the elderly gentleman who'd purchased a sustainable wool coat as a gift for his grandson. Each sale had felt like a small victory, proof that people cared about where their clothes came from. But small victories don't pay rent. They don't keep suppliers happy. They don't stop banks from calling in loans. The wind was calming now, or maybe Charlotte was just getting too cold to notice it. Either way, a strange peace was settling over her. She'd done her best. Sometimes your best isn't enough, and that's nobody's fault. That's just life.
Charlotte wasn't sure how long she'd been sitting there when she heard it, the distant sound of voices. At first, she thought it might be the wind playing tricks, but the voices grew clearer. Someone was calling her name. Charlotte, Charlotte James. Her eyes snapped open. Through the snow, she could see flashlight beams moving across the heath, searching. How did anyone even know she was here? Her phone was dead. She hadn't told anyone where she was going. There, over by the oak tree. A figure emerged from the snow, a young man she didn't recognize, wearing a bright yellow winter jacket and carrying a powerful torch. Behind him, more people were approaching, all bundled against the storm. Charlotte James, from Green Threads? The young man was slightly out of breath. I'm David. I saw your post. We all saw your post. My post? Charlotte's voice came out as barely a whisper. Her lips were numb, making it difficult to speak. It's everywhere, said a woman arriving behind David. She looked to be in her 50s, wearing a thick wool coat. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, everyone's sharing it. #Stormwalkers is trending worldwide. Charlotte stared at them in confusion. But my phone died. How are you here? David knelt down beside her, pulling a thermal blanket from his backpack. Your post was successfully posted before your battery died. It's been shared millions of times in the last 2 hours. People have been driving through this storm looking for you. Looking for me? Why? The older woman, who'd introduced herself as Margaret, sat down beside Charlotte despite the snow. Because you saved my grandson's life 6 months ago, dear. He was being bullied at school, felt completely worthless. Then he found your Instagram. You'd posted about being different, about how the world needs people who see things differently. He screenshotted that post and read it every day until he believed it. Charlotte felt tears freezing on her cheeks. I don't understand. Your post tonight, David said, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders. It's connecting with people all over the world. Everyone's sharing their own storms, talking about how your words helped them keep walking. You started something tonight, Charlotte, something bigger than you realize. As more people arrived at the oak tree, someone produced a portable phone charger. When Charlotte's phone flickered back to life, the screen exploded with notifications. Thousands of them. Her final post had been shared over 2 million times, and the responses were pouring in faster than her phone could display them. David helped her scroll through the messages, reading them aloud when her cold fingers couldn't manage the screen. Charlotte, I was planning to drop out of university tonight. Your words reminded me that failure is just another kind of success. I'm going to try one more semester. I lost my job last month and have been too ashamed to tell my family. Your post made me realize that struggling doesn't make me weak, it makes me human. My daughter died by suicide 2 years ago. I've been blaming myself ever since. Tonight, reading your words about how every attempt to love matters, I think she'd want me to keep loving. Thank you. Margaret pulled out her own phone, showing Charlotte a photo of a teenage boy with kind eyes and a shy smile. This is James, my grandson. He's been clean from self-harm for 6 months now. He carries a screenshot of one of your old posts in his wallet. Tonight, when your new post went viral, he was the first person to call me. Gran, he said, we have to find her. She saved me. Now it's our turn. Charlotte stared at the photo, remembering the post Margaret was talking about. She'd written it during her own dark period last year, when the first round of suppliers had canceled their contracts. It had been a simple message about how being different wasn't being wrong, just being brave enough to stand out. I never knew. I had no idea anyone was listening. Thousands of people were listening, said a new voice. Charlotte looked up to see an elderly Sikh man approaching, his turban dusted with snow. I'm Rajesh. I own the corner shop near your boutique. Every morning for 2 years, you'd stop in and ask how my family was doing. Really ask, not just politeness. When my wife was in hospital with pneumonia, you organized a meal schedule for our family through your social media. You never asked for anything in return. As Charlotte scrolled through more messages, each one hit her like a gentle wave of realization. She began to remember things she'd forgotten, small moments that hadn't seemed significant at the time. Look at this one, David said, pointing to a message from someone named Claire. She says you convinced her to leave an abusive relationship. Apparently, you posted something about knowing your worth and not settling for less than kindness. Charlotte remembered that post, too. She'd written it after watching a documentary about domestic violence, never imagining someone might read it and find the courage to leave a dangerous situation. Another message from a user called @MomOf3. Charlotte, last year I was drowning in postpartum depression, too ashamed to admit I needed help. Your post about asking for help being a sign of strength, not weakness, made me call my doctor. I got the support I needed. My children still have their mother because of your words. Margaret had been making phone calls, and more people kept arriving. Each person had a story. A teenager who'd started an environmental club at his school after seeing Charlotte's posts about sustainable fashion. A woman who'd left a toxic job and started her own business after reading about Charlotte's entrepreneurial journey. A man who'd reconnected with his estranged father after Charlotte had posted about the importance of forgiveness. The thing is, said David, who Charlotte learned was a teacher, you weren't just selling clothes, you were sharing hope. Every post about your struggles, your small victories, your beliefs about making the world better, people were collecting them like treasures. Charlotte looked around at the growing group of people who'd ventured into a blizzard to find her. But I failed. The business failed. I lost everything. Did you? Asked Rajesh gently. Look around you, Beta. Look at all the lives you've touched. Look at all the storms you've helped people weather. How is that failure? Margaret nodded toward her phone, where new messages were still appearing. James wanted me to read you something he wrote tonight. He says, Dear Charlotte, you taught me that broken doesn't mean worthless. Tonight, when I saw you were broken too, I realized we could help fix each other.
That's what people do. That's what love does.
The storm was getting worse, but Charlotte felt something she hadn't experienced in months: the desire to survive it. As she read message after message from people whose lives she'd unknowingly touched, a spark of her old determination began to flicker back to life. "We should get you somewhere warm," David said, noticing that despite the thermal blanket, Charlotte was still shivering. "My car's parked about half a mile away." "Mine's closer," offered Margaret, "just past the main path." But Charlotte was staring at her phone screen, reading a message from someone called Emma_21. "Charlotte, I'm a fashion student at Central St. Martin's. Your posts about sustainable fashion inspired my final project. I graduate next month, and I've been looking for someone to partner with. Your business didn't fail, it just needs a different approach. Let's talk." Another message from @GreenInvestor. "Saw your post through the shares, been following Green Thread's journey. Sustainable fashion is the future. Made some mistakes with your business model, but your vision was spot on. If you're interested in trying again, properly funded this time, let's meet." Charlotte looked up at the faces surrounding her, all these people who'd driven through a blizzard because her words had mattered to them. I think I need to go home." "Of course you do," said Margaret, starting to help Charlotte to her feet. "No, I mean," Charlotte paused, trying to find the right words. "I mean, I need to go home and figure out what comes next. All these people, all these messages, they're not just being kind, they're showing me something I couldn't see." She stood up slowly, her legs stiff from the cold, but her mind clearer than it had been in months. "My business failed, but maybe that was just the first attempt. Maybe I was so busy trying to avoid failure that I forgot why I started in the first place." David smiled, packing up the portable charger. "What was that? Why you started?" "To prove that business could be a force for good, that you could make money while making a difference." Charlotte looked around at the group. "Look at what happened tonight. I posted about failure and ended up connecting with more people than any of my marketing campaigns ever did." Rajesh chuckled. "Sometimes, Beta, the universe has to knock us down so we can see how many people are willing to help us stand back up."
The walk back to the cars was slow but purposeful. Charlotte found herself in the middle of the group, no longer alone with her despair, but surrounded by the tangible proof that her life had meaning beyond her own understanding. David walked beside her, holding his phone so she could continue reading messages. "Look at this thread," he said. People are sharing their own stories using #Stormwalkers. There are thousands of them now. Charlotte read over his shoulder. @teacher.tom. Lost my job during budget cuts. Charlotte's post reminded me that I didn't fail my students. I fought for them every single day. Starting tutoring service Monday. #Stormwalkers. @SingleMomStrong. Divorced last year, felt like I'd failed at marriage. Tonight I realized I succeeded at protecting my kids from a bad situation. Some failures are actually victories in disguise. #Stormwalkers. @Recovering Artist. Haven't painted in 5 years because my gallery rejected my work. Charlotte's post about every attempt mattering made me pick up my brushes tonight. This failure won't be the end of my story. #Stormwalkers. Margaret, walking on Charlotte's other side, was fielding phone calls from more people wanting to help. "That was the BBC," she said after hanging up. "They want to interview you about what happened tonight. And there's a journalist from The Guardian on his way to meet us at the car park." "I don't understand," Charlotte said, still processing everything. "How did this spread so fast?" "Because," said Rajesh, walking slightly behind them, In a world full of manufactured content and fake inspiration, you posted something real. People are hungry for authenticity, Beta. They're tired of being told everything is fine when their own lives feel like storms. As they reached the edge of the heath, Charlotte could see the car park in the distance, but she also saw something else that made her stop in her tracks. More cars were arriving, their headlights cutting through the storm. More people were getting out, looking around with purpose. "Word's still spreading," David said, following her gaze. "Look at Twitter." He showed her his phone. #Stormwalkers was trending not just in the UK, but globally. Posts were coming in from Australia, Canada, Japan, Germany. People sharing their own stories of failure and resilience, of times when someone's words had pulled them through their darkest moments. "I think," Charlotte said slowly, watching more people emerge from their cars into the storm, "I think I'm beginning to understand what my business was really supposed to be about."
By the time they reached the car park, a small crowd had gathered. News vans were pulling up alongside the regular cars. Charlotte recognized the reporter from the local BBC station, setting up her equipment despite the continuing snowfall. But it wasn't the media attention that stopped Charlotte in her tracks. It was the faces of the people who'd come out into the storm, a group of teenagers holding homemade signs that read, "Every storm passes," an elderly couple sharing a thermos of tea with strangers, a mother with 2 small children explaining to them that sometimes adults need help from their communities too. "Charlotte!" A young woman broke away from the crowd, running toward them. "I'm Emma. Emma from St. Martin's? I sent you the message about partnering up." Charlotte stared at the young woman with bright eyes and snow-covered dark hair. "You drove here? In this weather?" "Of course I did. When someone saves your creative dreams, you don't just send the DM, you show up." Emma pulled out a portfolio from her bag, somehow keeping it dry under her coat. "I've been working on sustainable fashion designs for 2 years, inspired by your posts. I have investors interested, suppliers lined up, and a whole network of young designers who want to be part of something meaningful." Margaret's phone rang again. After a brief conversation, she hung up with a huge smile. That was James. He's organized his entire 6th form college to start a mental health awareness campaign. They're calling it Stormwalkers too. He wants to know if you'll be their first speaker. David showed Charlotte his phone again. "Look at this. The mayor of London just tweeted about small businesses being the heart of communities. And there's a GoFundMe someone started for Green Threads. It's already at £30,000. Charlotte felt overwhelmed, but this time in a completely different way. "I don't deserve this," she whispered. "That's exactly why you do deserve it," said Rajesh, who'd been quietly observing everything. "You gave without expecting anything in return. You shared your struggles without demanding sympathy. You lifted others up even when you were falling down yourself. Tonight, Beta, you're just receiving what you've been putting out into the world all along." The BBC reporter approached, her camera operator following. "Miss James, I'm Rebecca from BBC London. Would you be willing to say a few words about what happened here tonight?" Charlotte looked around at all the faces, familiar and strange, young and old, united by something as simple as one person's honest words about failure and hope. She thought about her parents, who would probably see this interview and finally understand that their daughter hadn't failed at all. She just succeeded in a way they'd never expected. "Yes," she said, pulling the thermal blanket tighter around her shoulders. "I think I have something to say." standing in front of the BBC camera with snowflakes still falling around her and the faces of her impromptu community visible in the background, Charlotte felt a clarity she hadn't experienced in months. The red light on the camera blinked on, and Rebecca held out her microphone. "Tell us what happened here tonight, Charlotte." Charlotte looked directly into the camera, thinking about all the people who might be watching from their own storms. "Tonight, I learned that failure isn't the opposite of success. It's just success that hasn't found its proper shape yet." She paused, gathering her thoughts. 6 hours ago, I thought my story was over. My business had failed, I'd lost everything I thought mattered, and I couldn't see any reason to keep going. So I wrote what I thought would be my final message, posted it, and prepared to give up. The crowd around them had grown quiet, everyone listening intently. But what I didn't realize is that for 3 years, while I was building my business, I was also building something else entirely. I was building connections. Every post about struggling, every honest moment about failure, every time I shared hope when I barely had any myself, I was weaving a web of human connection that I couldn't even see. Rebecca leaned in closer. "And when your phone died?" "When my phone died, that web caught me." Charlotte smiled, looking around at the faces surrounding her. These people didn't come out in a blizzard to save a failed entrepreneur. They came out to save someone who had helped them save themselves. And in doing that, they showed me that my business hadn't failed at all. It had just been practicing for something bigger. She turned to Emma, who was standing nearby with her portfolio. "Tomorrow, I'm going to start rebuilding Green Threads. But this time, it won't just be about sustainable fashion. It'll be about sustainable hope, about building businesses that profit in kindness as much as money, about proving that success isn't just about what you achieve, it's about who you become while trying to achieve it." David held up his phone, showing the continuing stream of #Stormwalkers posts. "It looks like you're not rebuilding alone." "None of us are rebuilding alone," Charlotte said, looking back at the camera. "Every person watching this has helped someone, even if they don't know it. Every kind word, every encouraging message, every time you shared hope when you had very little yourself. It all matters. It all makes a difference."
The new Green Threads showroom in Camden buzzed with activity. Unlike the old boutique, this space was designed as much for community as for commerce. Half the space was devoted to sustainable fashion, the other half to what Charlotte had started calling the Stormwalker Lounge, a place where entrepreneurs, artists, and dreamers could work, collaborate, and support each other through their inevitable storms. Emma sat at one of the communal tables, sketching designs while video calling with suppliers in India who specialized in organic cotton. The investors she'd promised had materialized, but more importantly, so had something Charlotte had never expected: a waiting list of young entrepreneurs who wanted to learn the Stormwalker approach to business, building success on authenticity, community, and mutual support. Margaret had become an unofficial advisor, her decades of experience in community organizing proving invaluable. James, her grandson, was now studying business at university, but spent his weekends at Green Threads leading workshops for other young people who struggled with mental health. The Stormwalker Mental Health Initiative had spread to over 200 schools across the UK. Rajesh had partnered with Charlotte to create a corner of the showroom dedicated to products from other immigrant entrepreneurs, a community showcase that had become one of their most popular features. Charlotte's phone, now always fully charged and never far from reach, buzzed with a message from David, who had become Green Thread's Director of Community Outreach. BBC wants to do a 6-month follow-up story. Also, TED Talks just called. Also, the book publisher wants to meet next week. Also, remember to eat lunch. She smiled, looking around at the bustling space.
The walls were covered with messages from stormwalkers around the world, people who had shared their stories of failure, recovery, and community support. The hashtag had evolved into a global movement of people choosing authenticity over perfection, connection over competition. The original post from that snowy night was framed near the entrance, next to a photo of the search party that had found her under the oak tree. But Charlotte's favorite piece of wall art was a simple quote that a customer had written on their feedback card. "I came here to buy a dress. I left with hope." Charlotte walked to the large window overlooking the street, watching the evening rush of London life. Somewhere out there, she knew, people were facing their own storms. Some were just beginning to feel the first drops of rain. Others were in the eye of the hurricane, believing they were alone. But they weren't alone. None of them were. Her phone buzzed with another message, this one from someone called @NewYorkDreamer. "Charlotte, I'm a photographer who lost everything in a studio fire. Been following stormwalkers for months. Your posts helped me realize that losing my equipment didn't mean losing my vision. Opening a new studio next month. Thank you for teaching me that storms don't destroy dreams, they just teach us to build stronger foundations." Charlotte smiled, typing back, "The storm taught me something too, that we're all stronger than we know, especially when we stop trying to weather life's difficulties alone. Congratulations on your new beginning. Keep walking." As she hit send, Emma looked up from her sketches. "Another stormwalker?" "Another stormwalker," Charlotte confirmed, looking back out at the bustling street. "You know what the beautiful thing is? Every person out there has the power to be someone's reason to keep going. They just don't know it yet." Emma joined her at the window. "Think they'll figure it out?" Charlotte watched a woman hurrying past, talking animatedly on her phone, probably encouraging a friend through some difficulty. She saw a man helping an elderly lady with her heavy shopping bags. She noticed a teenager sharing his umbrella with a stranger at the bus stop. "There already are," she said softly. "They're already walking each other through the storm. They just need to realize that what they're doing, all that small kindness, all that everyday hope, it's not small at all. It's everything." The snow had long since melted, but Charlotte could still remember exactly how it felt to be lost in that blizzard. More importantly, she could remember how it felt to discover that she had never been walking alone. The last light of day painted the London sky in shades of gold and pink. Tomorrow would bring new storms for new people, but tonight, in this warm space full of dreams and community, Charlotte James was exactly where she belonged, not in spite of her failure, but because of what that failure had taught her about the true measure of success. Her phone displayed a final notification as the day ended. @Stormwalkers now has 2.3 million posts worldwide. But the number that mattered most was much simpler. It was the number of people who had learned, through one cold night and one honest post, that they were never walking alone. Charlotte turned off the lights and headed for the door, but not before adding one last message to the community board by the entrance. "Every storm ends. Every failure teaches. Every person matters. Keep walking, stormwalkers. The dawn is coming." Outside, London continued its eternal rhythm of millions of people walking through their individual storms. Most of them not yet realizing that they carried within themselves the power to be someone else's shelter from the wind. But they would learn. One post, one message, one small act of kindness at a time, they would all learn what Charlotte had discovered in the darkest hour of that December night, that the most powerful force in any storm is not the wind that tries to knock you down, but the hands that reach out to help you stand back up. The story of the stormwalkers was just beginning.